This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. And what I'm looking at today is 2021's Spider-Man No Way Home, directed by Jon Watts. Spider-Man No Way Home is the third movie in the Spider-Man trilogy produced by Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures, which started with Spider-Man Homecoming and was followed by Spider-Man Far From Home. Spider-Man No Way Home is probably the best movie produced around Spider-Man yet. And I'll give you an anecdote as to why I think that. I caught this in the theater, which is the only place it's available. Now, in these pandemic days, theaters deliberately don't seek to fill every seat. Typically, there's a space between you and whomever else would be seated next to you. So, on my left, I had a person who observed that space buffer, which is good. What was not so good was that they sounded like Darth Vader. I kid you not. It sounded like they were sleeping. But I heard them respond to what was happening on screen on occasion. So I don't know what was going on with them. On my right, while the seat next to me was empty, which it should have been, when the movie started, about halfway in, it was not empty because someone just decided to take that seat. COVID be damned. So that really irritated me. And also, it's not something I can confront them on because, heck, it's the exchange of breath that's the problem. So I just kind of paid no attention to it. Despite those things happening, it did not distract me from enjoying this movie. I got into it. And in fact, the only time I noticed the people on the left of me and on the right of me was when I kind of surfaced from getting really deep into this movie. The movie's a triumph. There's no other way to put it. And if you looked at the box office, it's reached, I believe, $1 billion as of Saturday. Kind of is the cherry on top of the cake. And so it's a great movie. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch, but then again, as I've said before, no movie is perfect, but it's pretty damn good. Do you recall the scene from Star Trek Discovery when the engineer, I think his name was Stamets, was talking about the power of math?
A little TLC, but all is well, Commander. This is the power of math, people! Come on!
You are correct, MC.
That scene was mocked, and rightly so, in much of the fan community, because it was kind of dumb and patronizing in its own way. The thing is, there's a scene just like it in Spider-Man No Way Home. And I'm willing to bet that that scene doesn't draw as much ire as a scene in Star Trek Discovery. And sure, it's not quite as blatant as the Discovery scene was. And plus, there's just so much spectacle revolving around Spider-Man No Way Home. It may not quite have resonated, but it's a kind of scene that is somewhat comic booky. Now that seems redundant because it's a Spider-Man movie. Clearly it's based on a comic book. And it's very comic booky in the way that things happen. Though for the scene to have unfolded in that fashion was just a little bit hard to swallow. It wasn't terrible, just hard to swallow. But as I said, on the whole, this movie just works. And it sweats the details, which I like. For instance, if you recall Spider-Man fighting Dr. Octopus in this movie, Spider-Man doesn't often hit Dr. Octopus. Why is that? Because Dr. Octopus is a regular guy, and his power comes from his mechanical arms. So if Spider-Man were to hit him with any kind of force, he would literally destroy him, because Spider-Man is significantly stronger. So therefore, in this movie, unlike in Spider-Man 2, the arms are doing the fighting. The arms are absorbing the impact. Otto Octavius in this movie, I think, was barely hit by Spider-Man, which is as it should be, because, as I said, he could not stand it. they redeemed Electro in this movie. If you recall Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, he was a caricature of a human. He wasn't a real person in any stretch of the word. The Electro in Spider-Man No Way Home is not that Electro. He seems to have the same doubts, but he doesn't seem to be controlled by them. He seems to be an actual person. And that's really interesting to see how they're redeeming these characters. And even the Green Goblin. And in fact, Willem Dafoe looks like the Green Goblin more than he ever did with the mask on. It's pretty damn clever. And what was particularly brilliant, by my reckoning, was that if you've seen The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you notice that Andrew Garfield's interpretation of the character was way too confident. He was way too almost arrogant at times. And I think his Spider-Man was good. I thought his Peter Parker was not so good. And in this movie, they redeem him. He's flawed, he's uncertain. He is what Peter Parker should always be. Peter Parker, as depicted in the comics, is never for long at the top of the world. Things don't for long go well for him. As a character, he's always fighting to maintain just a little bit of happiness in a really mean world. And Andrew Garfield's depiction of Peter Parker nails it. And while Tobey Maguire looked really old, I don't know if he was de-aged, but he can't be older than his mid-40s, I would guess. So I don't quite understand why he looked kind of gaunt and old as he did. Though, as I said, Andrew Garfield was a revelation, and so was Tom Holland. And as the heart of the movie, he beat strong and true to the nature of who Spider-Man is, who at the end of the day is, like I mentioned in the case of Andrew Garfield, who, despite his power, has no real control over the trajectory of his own life. It's a remarkable movie, it's a well-done movie, it's an interesting movie, and it's a fun movie. I often don't like it when movies are referred to as experiences, because many times they're not. This is as close as most movies will ever come to being a genuine experience. It's heartfelt, it's beautiful, it's harrowing at times, and the characters are people you grow to really care about. It is cinema. And I don't like to get to the nonsense of whether something is Oscar worthy or not. Because let's be honest, most of the movies that are boring. But conversely, if there's any movie that deserves a closer look and consideration for that hallowed award, it's certainly Spider-Man No Way Home. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. If you agree, disagree, let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.